Hey guys, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, home of all things stock, investment, and personal finance related. Now for today's video, we've got a double header for you. The first half, we're going to talk about some recent developments from Bitfarms Ltd. And in the second half of today's video, I'm going to give you guys a deep dive into my call option portfolio strategy and break down exactly what kind of call options I'm holding, how much I paid for them, and my bullish thesis for both HUT Mining and Bitfarms moving into 2023 and 2024. So super exciting stuff. Hope you guys enjoy. I'd love to hear your thoughts on my strategy and my thesis on Bitcoin and these crypto miners in the comment section below. Before we get into all that, please take a second, hit the like button, you guys. It's a big help to myself and the channel. And if you're not already subscribed, please do so. McNallie Money. Now with that being said, let's get into today's update. Okay guys, so that's right. Today's video, we're going to be taking a closer look at Bitfarms Ltd. This is my second biggest position in terms of my crypto mining portfolio. And in addition to the recent news and update we're going to be covering from Bitfarms, I also wanted to break down my call option strategy on both HUT Mining and Bitfarms Ltd. to show you guys exactly what kind of calls I'm holding, the value I've invested in this position, and my strategy over the next couple of years, and potential payout if my bullish thesis proves to be true. So before we get into all that, I wanted to walk you guys through some recent developments at Bitfarms. So you can see this is as of close on Friday, December 16th. They were up about 4.5% on the day. This is the Toronto Exchange or the TSX listing, so BITF. Bitfarms also trades on the NASDAQ in the United States under the exact same ticker, and you can actually see on the US listing they were up about 9.25% to close out at 50 cents US. And what was interesting here, you guys, is during the trading session, we saw a complete reversal. So Bitfarms started the day out at about 65 cents. They trended down throughout the session till about the middle of the day, actually hitting a low of 59 cents Canadian. And then what was super interesting is we had that reversal and Bitfarms absolutely took off, gaining about 8 cents to close out at 67 cents Canadian. And this was despite the price of Bitcoin falling steadily or consistently throughout the day. Now what's even more interesting is in after hours trading, Bitfarms was up in excess of 20%. So I saw anywhere from 12 to 20% in after hours action. The forum boards and discussion boards were absolutely going crazy with thousands of different comments speculating on what was going on. And despite searching, I really couldn't find a lot of news aside from the article we're going to cover next up in the presentation. So again, based on the close we saw on Friday, market cap on Bitfarms is now sitting in the 150 million Canadian range, which is a significant discount from where this company was trading only a couple of months ago. And as a reminder, last November, Bitfarms traded hands as high as $11.60 Canadian, meaning the company has now lost in excess of about 95% of their value over the last 13 months. Now, with that being said, a lot of people would really shy away from these names. However, I think this is the perfect storm for these small cap crypto mining companies. They've been brought down by the macroeconomic environment, the crash in crypto, the crash in tech stocks, the rising interest rates, the panic around the world, the geopolitical uncertainty. And I think this is the exact situation where you can buy low and expect major returns over the next couple of years, as I'm going to explain in detail using my own strategy and real call options that I've purchased towards the end of today's presentation. Now, as I just mentioned, Bitfarms did put out news on Friday morning before the trading session started up. So this definitely was a catalyst to move the share price during Friday's session. However, I'm not sure exactly what led to that big after hours jump we saw Friday night. However, I did want to go through this as part of the presentation because this is a major or impactful update for the company itself. So you can see the title, Bitfarms sells their Della Point property for $3.6 million US in net proceeds. So a big cash injection for the organization. Again, came out 5 a.m. Mountain Standard Time on Friday, so before the markets opened up. And you can see Jeff Morphy, who's the president and COO of Bitfarms, goes on to say, today we closed the sale of our Della Point location and received net cash of $3.6 million as expected. After extensive due diligence and competitive process, Société de Transport de Sherbrooke, or STS, emerged as the successful bidder to acquire this facility, and it's gratifying that Sherbrooke's transportation agency can utilize our electrical infrastructure with green power generated by Hydro-Quebec and supplied by Hydro Sherbrooke to meet the needs of the community. We are also pleased that we could close out our De La Pointe facility and build out our new locations ahead of schedule, important milestones to us and Sherbrooke's local residents. So this is in relation to their Sherbrooke locations in Quebec, here in Canada, and as we've discussed in previous videos, they're currently going through the process of building out new locations in this area. So really moving their Bitcoin mining operations to more industrial zoned locations within the province of Quebec. And selling off this De La Pointe location is a big step forward for the organization. And you can see the article goes on to call that out. For STS, this agreement demonstrates a successful partnership with Bitfarms, which completes the relocation of its Bitcoin mining operation to an industrial area within the city of Sherbrooke. And we're actually going to look at Bitfarms' various different mining locations in a couple of slides here to really talk about this transformation. Now, before we get too far into today's presentation, I wanted to do a quick reminder in terms of where Bitfarms is at with their current mining portfolio. So if we jump over to the corporate website, I'll leave a link in the video description below, and we look at the company info section, you can see they're currently operating 182 megawatts in total capacity. They've got 10 farms in operation or under development right now, 4.4 total exahash, and they're mining an average of about 15.1 Bitcoin per day based on their current infrastructure and capacity. So the company has definitely seen tremendous growth over the last year, both in the number of locations or mining sites they have active and in their overall exahash, which correlates directly to their average Bitcoin they're pulling in each and every day. And this slide really builds on that point. So you can see the 182 megawatt capacity. They mined a total of 4,700 Bitcoin in the first 11 months of 2022, which is up 51% from the prior year. Currently, they represent about 2% of the total Bitcoin network capacity. And one of the major points of differentiation from Hut 8 Mining is Bitfarms operates in 4 different countries. So here in Canada, the United States, and in South America. However, they are having some challenges getting that Argentina location up and operational with some outstanding import concerns or red tape that they're currently navigating. Now, I just mentioned how that sale of the De La Pointe facility is a big injection of cash for this organization, and that really goes to support their financial position that they've built over the last couple of quarters. So they're maintaining that low direct cost of production or the input cost for each and every Bitcoin. They're generating positive cash flow from operations, as we saw in their Q3 earnings report. So $10 million in adjusted positive EBITDA, and they're decreasing their financial leverage. They're paying down debt and maintaining a flexible balance sheet and financial resources in the third quarter of this year. And as we talked about in previous videos, all of Bitfarms' debt is structured in a way that it will be cleared up prior to the 2024 halving event, which is a major strategic milestone, not only for this organization, but for the entire Bitcoin mining ecosystem or community going into that major event. Now, this is a look here at the various different mining locations. So you can see a total of 10 facilities making up that 182 megawatts. Now, that's their current operating capacity as of the end of November. By the end of December, they're expecting to have up to 229 megawatts operational, which represents about a 20% increase from where they were the prior month. And the news we just saw in relation to their De La Pointe facility has to do with their operations here in Canada in the province of Quebec, specifically their Sherbrooke campus upgrades and enhancements. So you can see bringing online their Garlock and Bunker Phase 3 facilities in the city of Sherbrooke, which are going to replace that De La Pointe facility. Now, in addition to the 5 farms they have operational here in Canada, they also have a mining facility in Washington in the United States, and those 2 countries of operation in South America, which is Paraguay and Argentina. And you can see Argentina has the biggest runway in terms of capacity, so currently operating at about 10 megawatts. They're building this location out in phases, and they're looking to ramp that to 50 megawatts by the end of December. Again, if they're able to stick on schedule based on some of that regulatory red tape that they're currently encountering. And if you actually scroll to the next slide, you can see a look at the new Sherbrooke locations in Quebec. Again, this is powered by hydroelectricity. You can see there's the Della Point facility that's now been sold and been replaced by the new enhanced Bunker, Ledger, and Garlock locations. And by retiring Della Point, that's actually going to take 12 megawatts out of their overall capacity. However, that's going to be more than offset by powering up or energizing 12 additional megawatts at the Garlock location and 6 additional megawatts at the Bunker 3 facility. So overall, relatively good or bullish news for Bitfarms in terms of the sale of their Della Point facility, their overall production for the month of November, and their overall capacity or megawatt strategy, as we saw in the last slide. Now, on the other side of the coin, we had an article come out on Wednesday, December 14th. I've had a lot of subscribers talk about this or ask about this in the comment section of these crypto mining videos. Bitfarms has now officially received their NASDAQ notification regarding the minimum bid price or deficiency of that price in terms of where their shares are trading. So what this means, you guys, is Bitfarms is now trading below the threshold required to be listed on the NASDAQ. And if this doesn't change, they actually risk being delisted from this exchange. Now, the good news here is this is not a quick process and Bitfarms has time to recover. And as you scroll through the article, you can see they've now closed below the minimum $1 US threshold. And the company has now been provided an initial 180-day or about a 6-month grace period, which lasts till June 12th, to regain compliance or have their shares trade above that $1 threshold for a minimum of 10 consecutive business days. So this is actually a concern that both Bitfarms, DigiHost, and HUT Mining are facing in the midst of this bear market we've seen in the price of Bitcoin. So I'm personally hopeful and optimistic that we are going to see a recovery in the price of Bitcoin, which should lift the share price of these companies to above that $1 threshold. However, this is definitely something that shook off a lot of investors, and that threat or potential delisting activity is not something a lot of prospective investors want to see. However, as I mentioned in the intro, this is part of that perfect storm or that bearish news that is really leading to a lot of sell-off in these crypto mining names. And for me, as someone with a long-term outlook on these companies, I think this is a great opportunity to accumulate shares. And even if these companies do end up being delisted from the NASDAQ, they're still going to trade here in Canada. They're still viable businesses. They just aren't meeting that minimum $1 US threshold. So long story short, the NASDAQ has now notified Bitfarms. They've got about 6 months to get their shares back above $1 US for a sustained 10-day period. If that happens, that would reset the whole process. And if it does not, they'll be pulled from the NASDAQ exchange. However, they'll still trade here in Canada on the TSX, barring any other unforeseen information coming up. Now, speaking of market opportunities and the depressed price we've seen in both HUT Mining and Bitfarms, I wanted to share with you guys my exact strategy here in terms of my option plays related to these two companies. Now, I've previously mentioned in a number of my videos that I'm aggressively buying call options on both HUT Mining and Bitfarms, and these are the exact call options that I currently hold for both of these companies. And I wanted to bring this up to explain my strategy, the potential risk and reward that I've put myself in related to this trade strategy or thesis. So you can see here, I've been buying these call options ever since the start of the year. So January 21st of 2022, they range in terms of their strike price anywhere from $1.50 to $8. The C stands for call option. It doesn't stand for Canadian. So all options that I have here are traded in US dollars. The strategy with each one of these is a long call. You can see the associated ticker here and the expiration date. Now, I do have a couple of call options for HUT Mining that expire in January of 2023. So depending on how the month of December goes, I may or may not come out ahead in terms of these three contracts here. These both have an $8 strike. So based on the current share price of HUT Mining, these are probably going to expire worthless. However, the remaining contracts here, you guys, have an expiration date either in January of 2024 or January of 2025. So you can see January 19th, 2024 is the next series of call option expirations. And then following that is January 17th of 2025. So I've staggered my expiration dates to really give myself more of a chance for the underlying price of Bitcoin to recover. And in my own personal opinion, I do think we're going to start to see a recovery in 2023, leading into that big halving event in 2024. So that's why I've really structured it this way, to take advantage of that recovery And worst case scenario, if we don't see a recovery in 2023, I definitely think we will in 2024. And that's why I've purchased these call options with the January 2025 expiration date. Now, what I've done below here, you guys, is a little bit of analysis for the overall portfolio of options that I've assembled. So in total, I have 59 contracts. I've invested $11,176. Again, this is US funds. I also pay a $10 US fee every time I purchase a set of contracts. So I've made 17 purchases overall. You can see that some of them I've purchased up to 10 contracts at a time. So that's an additional $170 US in actual transaction or trade fees. And if you do the math here, you divide out the 11,176 by the 59 contracts, you can see on average I've paid $1.89 US. Each contract controls 100 shares, which means each contract on average works out to about $189 US if you look at the total option portfolio on a cumulative basis. Now, with that being said, if I do the same thing in terms of the strike prices, so I multiply the various different strikes by the number of contracts that I purchased, and I then divide that out by the total 59 contracts that I hold, it works out to an average strike price of $3.25 US per contract. So what this actually means is my break even overall for all of my options is right around $5.15 US. Your all-in cost or break-even price is calculated by taking your average strike and adding in the premium that you actually paid for each contract. So you can see $1.89 plus the $3.25 works out to $5.15. So essentially what that means is I need Hut 8 Mining to be trading at or above $5.15 by January of 2024 or January of 2025 based on the various different contracts to break even on this investment. Now, with that being said, Hut 8 Mining hit an all-time high of $13.40 US back in November of last year. So if we're able to achieve that same all-time high, that means I'd make a profit of about $8.25 per contract. Again, this is in US funds, and each contract represents 100 shares. So that means, in other words, I'd make $825 US if we were able to hit the all-time high we saw last November with no additional theta or time value in these contracts, meaning between the 59 contracts that I've purchased, I have the potential to earn about $49,000 US in total profit. So that means I would have a return of about 435% if you look at the total I've invested of $11,200 compared to the potential payout of about $48,700. Now, a lot of people may look at this and say, okay, well, what if you were to just go out and buy shares in that $3-4 range? The companies ran up to about $13 or $14. You'd have a similar type of return, but you don't have the risk associated with options of the contracts actually expiring worthless or hitting the expiration date before you've seen that move in share price. And that's definitely a valid concern or strategy. Again, this is only my option strategy. I do hold shares in both companies as well. However, the thing that we're not considering here with options is, number one, you're going to have additional time value. So if we see a big jump in the price of Bitcoin, say middle of next year, these contracts are going to trade well above $13.40 each, because you've got that intrinsic time value as well. And the other thing we're not considering here, you guys, is the actual production rate and the Bitcoin reserve that these companies hold compared to what they had back in November of last year. So what I've done in this section here is actually look at the price of Bitcoin when we saw that all-time high compared to the price of Bitcoin now and the actual reserve of Bitcoin that Hut 8 had at these two different points in time. So back in November of last year, when we saw the all-time high of about $13.40, I should note the intraday high was a lot closer to about $15, $16. However, the price of Bitcoin at that point in time was trading at $63,000 US. Now, at that point in time, Hut 8 Mining had about 5,000 Bitcoin in their reserve. So if you multiply that out, that gave them a total reserve value of about $315 million. Now, fast forward to today, Bitcoin is now trading in the 17,000 US range. So we've seen a substantial drop in the price of Bitcoin, about a quarter of where it was last November. However, the reserve has grown now to 9,000 Bitcoin for Hut 8 mining, meaning the total reserve value is about half of where it was in November of last year, or $153 million. So if you look at this objectively and say, okay, last November, Hut 8 mining was trading at $13.40 US. Bitcoin was trading at 63,000 and they had a total reserve value of about 315 million. Logic would say that if their reserve is now about half the value we observed last November, Bitcoin is trading about a third or a quarter of the value of last November, the share price should be in the same relative range. However, that's not what we see, with the current price of Hut 8 mining shares trading hands at 92 cents US. So despite having substantially more computing power, higher hash rate, higher daily production for both of these organizations, and a much larger reserve in terms of total Bitcoin, we've seen the share price of both of these companies retreat anywhere from 90 to 95%. And that's why I think this is such a golden opportunity if you're a long-term bull on the price and technology behind Bitcoin. Now, this full analysis is based on Hut 8 Mining's reserve and reserve value. Obviously, Bitfarms has a little different strategy. They have a much smaller reserve. They've actually been selling off part of their reserve each and every month to fund their operations. However, the saving grace for Bitfarms is they've got substantially higher exahash and they're growing out their portfolio in terms of their capacity much more aggressively than Hut 8 Mining. So with Hut 8 Mining, you're getting that big hold on for dear life strategy and huge reserve, again, in excess of 9,000 Bitcoin unencumbered by the end of this month. So more of the slow and steady approach with the 100% focus here in Canada. With Bitfarms, you've got the smaller reserve, but they're aggressively expanding their hash rate and the number of locations and countries in which they operate. So in both situations, these companies are in much better positions than they were last November. The only thing that's changed here is the outlook and the sentiment around Bitcoin based on the big pullback we've seen in the underlying price. However, as we talked about in the intro, virtually every asset class is down huge this year, you guys. Crypto mining is considered a technology. The tech stocks have been beaten up huge this year. If you look at Facebook, Apple, Google, Nvidia, these companies are down anywhere from 50 to 75%. And despite the drama and the bad press we've seen recently out of the Bitcoin and crypto community, with FTX and BlockFi filing for bankruptcy, this is not a problem with the underlying technology or Bitcoin protocol. This is actually a problem with the people running those companies. So for me, nothing has changed. One Bitcoin is still one Bitcoin. We haven't had any issues with the actual technology or protocol itself. These companies are in substantially better positions in terms of their hash rate and their reserve. And on top of all of that, we're going into one of these big halving events in 2024, which historically has seen a major bull run in the price of Bitcoin. So for me, this is a perfect opportunity to take advantage of these depressed prices. I think the pendulum has swung way too far to the bear side here. And based on my analysis, even with the depressed price of Bitcoin, these companies should still be trading in the $4, $5, $6 US range based on where they're at in terms of financial health compared to where they were at in November of last year. And speaking of November of last year, this is actually that big spike we saw. Actually, it was October 1st. We saw that high of $13.40 US on Hut 8 Mining. You can see again, they're now trading in the 92 cent US range. And just as proof, if we go back to an article that came out January 5th, talking about Hut 8 Mining's production for the year, you can see they mined 5,518 self-mined Bitcoin. They exited the year with a run rate of approximately 276 Bitcoin per month. This is for the month of December. So if we subtract 276 from that total for the month of December and the month of November, that's where we get that 5,000 Bitcoin reserve. So they had 5,500 as of the end of December. You minus off 275 for each month, you're sitting in the neighborhood of about 5,000 Bitcoin as of the end of October of 2021. And you can see at that point in time, they were sitting at only 2.0 exahash per second in terms of capacity and a much older fleet of actual computing units, not to mention the addition of their high performance computing division or that data center business, which they've rolled in throughout 2022. And if we pull up the historical price on Bitcoin, we go back to the end of October, you can see they were in the range of about $60,000 to $62,000 US. So the more I look into this situation, you guys, the more I research about these companies, talk to the leadership teams, have them on the channel, I just think this is a golden opportunity. Again, this entire thesis rests on the confidence and trust in the underlying technology of Bitcoin. So if you don't believe in Bitcoin long term, this is definitely not an investment you want to make. However, if you're like me and you do think this technology and digital currency is really going to be the way of the future, I would highly encourage you guys to take a look, because I think the prices we're seeing right now from Hut 8 Mining, CleanSpark, Bitfarms, DigiHost really are getting quite silly. They're extremely oversold, and this presents a huge opportunity over the next couple of years, in my personal opinion. Now, the other thing I wanted to quickly mention here, you guys, I'm actually reading a great book right now talking about Bitcoin and the emerging technology that goes along with it. So I would highly encourage you guys to take a look. The book's called The Bitcoin Standard. Here's a look at the cover here, the decentralized alternative to central banking. And the further I get through this book, again, just gives me a ton of confidence in the underlying technology, which in turn should really help the share price of these crypto miners as we start to see a recovery in the price of crypto and Bitcoin specifically. That's all for today, you guys. I'd be super curious to hear your thoughts on my investment thesis or strategy here, whether or not you agree with me. Do you think we're going to see a rally before the halving event in 2024? Or do you think these companies are slowly going to fizzle out and die over the next couple of years? If you're still watching the video at this point in time, make sure you hit the thumbs up. It's a big help to myself and the channel. And if you're not currently subscribed to McNallie Money, feel free to do so. That's all for now. Thanks for watching and have a great rest of your day.